Hey, this is Leroy Downs. Welcome to another version of the Just Jazz Cafe. And oh my gosh, man, we have so much brilliance. I'm very, very honored and blessed to be able to talk to so many wonderful people. But this is one gentleman that I truly admire, man. The sound, everything about this human being, man, is entirely beautiful. We all know him together. He's the one cat that we call Mr. Wadada Leo Smith. Hey, man, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Leroy. How are you?
I'm beautiful, man. And, for me, it's always beautiful to be in your presence. I love to hear the sound. I love to hear you speak and talk. And, there's always so many wonderful things for me to learn about myself and about, our culture, man.
I hear that too, because artists do have something to think about, and talking helps to reveal a little bit of those thoughts.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've obviously been doing this for quite a long time, revealing your thoughts inside the music. And, you know, here's one thing I really love before we even get into the music is that, at the end of some of your concerts, and this happened to me too, you recognize the people that are coming out to hear you speak and hear the music. And, you might take your glasses off and like, I see you. Okay, I see you. And it's like such a empowering feeling to know that, people are recognized. And I just want to talk about that being recognized in our humane society, man, with all these things that are going on. Uh, you know, we're standing up once again for our civil rights. And man, you've experienced this many times in your lifetime. So I just want to hear you talk about it.
Well, the first thing that we need to think about is how do we define this? Civil rights actually went out very, very early in the system, and ever since the movement was put on an international level by Dr. Martin Luther King and those other radicals that was amongst and around during his time, including Malcolm X and people like that. They put it on the international level. So really the best way to talk about what's going on now, and since the internationalization of this movement, is that it's a quest for human rights, because civil rights can always be aborted and blocked by any corrupt government.
Mm.
And we have that as a practice, as a historical practice, we have that completely demonstrated over and over and over and over. And even when you have someone that goes into office like a President Barack Obama, you find out that every single move that was made by him was set up with obstacles and difficulties by the same kind of people that espouse the notion of democratic principles. So this thing is about human rights and the rights and privileges and the declaration of uh, the contract of living. And that contract of living, it can only be stopped when it's limited, and it can only be stopped when there's ignorance. So those are the two powerful things that actually block the moving forward to attain these liberties and justice that are defined not just in the Constitution, because the Constitution limit those rights, but defined by the Almighty who put us here on the planet. And how we know what they are is that intuitive, inspirational flooding of our minds and hearts, which is the message from the Creator.
Yeah, you talk about ignorance, and that's a powerful word, man, because ignorance there's belief in ignorance. You know, people may not think they're ignorant, even though they might be, but the strength of their belief in what they believe holds strong. So in order to speak to that person or talk to that group of people, and or change or sway or have them open their minds and look at anything from a different perspective, it's going to be a pretty rough thing to do. You have a lot.
Well, I think it's virtually impossible to do. That's my feelings. Because if you look at the scale, if you put two even forces on the scale, they generally balance the scale. And the tipping of the up and down of the scale is that level that shows that the person that is sleeping, which represents the tipping down of the scale, that person that is sleeping, the first thing for them to be able to understand what's going on, they have to have the capacity for change. And that's a bleak number when you weigh it against the ignorance that exists amongst the people on this planet. That's a very powerful weight that pulls the scale down, keeps it from being balanced. But on the other hand, those that who are and have the capacity for change, they're the ones that register with the ones that understand, that bring the scale back to a balance. And very rare moments tips it above, you see. And that tipping above is the moment where revolution occurs, not where it's balanced, but when
Yeah.
it tips above. And by revolution, we don't really mean renovation. We don't really mean patching up. We don't really mean changing the existing fractured document to fit the new occasion. Revolution means completely changing the whole thing.
Well,
Okay.
I think the scales are tipping in our favor right now in terms of this global love that I see coming out in terms of this injustice. It's kind of the first time in my life that I've seen so many people from so many ways of life, you know, standing strong behind these ideals that, hey, we're all human and we're all equal and we should not be treated with such injustice. All I've seen really throughout my entire lifetime, and really not just have seen psychological things that have taken place as well. You know, all these subliminal messages about who you are and where you belong and how much money that you're going to make and what you can and cannot do. I mean, that's kind of inbred in in our community.
Yeah, it is inbred. Um, but you know, see, like there's a power, there's a force stronger than all the other forces on the planet. And we often look at strength in numbers and strength in military hardware and strength in economic possibilities. All of those are powerful strengths for the people that believe in those systems. But for those who believe in spirituality, and I don't mean religion, I mean spirituality, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because religion, all the religions around the world, from whatever their names are, everybody know their names. All of them have engaged into this really um, this corruptness of pure ideas. Okay, but spirituality is the level of consciousness that everyone works towards to become their real and original self. That's what spirituality means. That's the journey of spirituality. So that's stronger. And I can give you an example, a physical,
Yeah.
historical example of that idea. African Americans, let's say it this way, African people were brought into the slave system, okay, during the 11th, 12th, and 13th century, okay? And they were brought into these systems because of advancement in technology, the discovery of gunpowder, and et cetera, okay? And eventually, African continent became the force and the level in which raw human beings were taken to become workaholics into a new, how can you say it, industrialized system, okay? And with all of that, with all of the wealth, with all of the guns, with all of the hatred and the evil, no nation on the planet came to the rescue of these people who was in bonded and slaves throughout Central and North and South America. Nobody came to their rescue. Who rescued them? How did they get out of slavery? It wasn't Lincoln, okay? It wasn't Lincoln, no. They got out of slavery because of their spiritual commitment to the truth and the ability of their prayers to liberate them. And that force is what caused Lincoln to sign that document. He didn't sign it because he wanted to free people. He signed it because he wanted to, quote, reunite the Union, to balance the Union, because the war had been created based around this so-called problem. He thought that that would solve the problem. Okay. Well, it didn't solve the problem. The problem still exists, you see. But the removal from bondage occurred because of spirituality amongst the captives and their ability to have prayers that was directly intercepted and understood by the Almighty.
Yeah. Well,
because they could have killed all of us, but you see, no one has the capability or the capacity to destroy everyone. They just don't have it. They couldn't do it with the original people here because they're still around. And one day they will reclaim the earth. You see, the same thing with African people. They still around. One day they will reclaim the earth.
Well, there's all of this unity, and I think at least for the first time in my life, I see, people recognizing, and I have, white friends and friends of other colors, and you know what, we're still the same. Even through all of this, we're still the same. That just shows that we're human brothers. A couple of them, come at me with this sorrow or this guilt, and you shouldn't have that because we didn't operate on that before, so why are you coming with that now? So it's all about this mindset that I can tell that where people are originally coming from and where they want to go, with this movement for us as people to unite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, look, I know this. The first step for unity is gathering. That's the very first step. Okay, and normally the first step is much larger than the end results. Okay.
Yeah.
The word unity is a very powerful word. It is the first principle of spirituality where one reunites with the Creator. Okay. And so when you look at it down the road when the journey through the political apparatus, okay, we have to wait till it gets on the other side of the political apparatus before we can know how successful it was. Okay.
Yeah.
And the real truth is, and it's very simple because truth is not complicated. The real truth is that if the people of the world that control the power base, and it's based off of families and wealth, okay, if they wanted to have this thing to resolve, they could make it possible so that the people that are influenced by their power to do
Yeah,
it.
right.
And let me say this, to do that simply means that all one generation that has privilege and power has to do is to deny the inheritance of that principle, deny the inheritance of those powers, which carry with it the political weight, the economic weight, and the justification for socialization of other people's ways and means. You see, that it would resolve it right there. You see, no
Yeah.
legislation would be needed, no power base of the wealthy families that control the planet would be needed. None of that would be needed. Simply to abort for one generation the inheritance of this privilege and power and all that it carries along with it.
Well,
And believe me, brother, that's a tall order
yeah.
to reject.
I was gonna say that's a big stand
That's
up.
a tall order to reject.
Yeah, no
Okay,
doubt.
but that's what it takes to change. Okay, that's exactly what it takes to change, because you and I and the people that have been suppressed in this country and around the world, we can't change it. All we can do is make you morally understand your right and wrong in this issue. That's all we can do. That's why Dr. Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi and all these people come along, Rosa Parks, they come along to show us that our power is in the morality and the spirituality of stuff.
Well, speaking of morality and spirituality and all these things are inside your music, and for decades you spent time associating with like-minded musicians to not necessarily verbalize it, but you verbalize it through your music, through your writings, through the power and strength of the spirituality of where you're coming from. You put that into these beautiful notes, man, and you put it out there, and hopefully that, you know, you can tell me if people over the years have been getting the message, you know, verbally or subliminally, or I know you're telling the story all of the time through the music.
Well, through the music is one way, and of course the music is nonverbal. Even when there's a text, it's still nonverbal,
Yeah.
because the comprehension of the text without understanding what the heart felt is not a possible conclusion as to what it is there. You see, um, but um, but more specifically, my first written document, 8 Notes, A New World Music, Creating Music. That document was a clear manifesto that showed what I was thinking and how I thought that those things could be useful in terms of comprehension of how to change stuff. And that little book had in this initial printed about 200 copies. Okay.
Hmm.
It's been printed twice since then, and then two independent a third and fourth time. But that little book, over the journey of, let's say, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, I have signed nearly 150 Xerox copies of that book.
Hmm.
Okay. Many people have circulated it back and forth through the digital print, through the digital device system. So even though the actual circulation in print was approximately what originally 200, maybe another 200, maybe another 200. So you're looking at approximately 600 to 700 copies out there. There's probably in people's hand more than 1,000 copies.
Mm.
You see, so that's tells you something about the printed word as it relate to connecting and transferring information. The music, on the other hand, reaches a lot more people, and not only a lot more people, but is able to access a certain region within the consciousness of the people that observe and participate, that they carry this force along with them for the rest of their life.
Yeah, it's the vibration,
As part of their consciousness.
Yeah.
You see. And then that consciousness is also become part of the collective consciousness of what is the right path towards human living. And so, yeah, the influence goes very deep. The often it doesn't have to be in the surface of one's actions. You see, all it has to be is that nudge to say, don't go down that street, take this street, or look at that particular example. Either endorse it because it's right or avoid it because it's not. You see, that's the subtlety of how it works. And I would say that the music in this country, creative music, more specifically in this country, has been responsible for the balance and harmony that does exist in this country. And without it, and as marginalized as it has been relegated to, it still has the power to balance out the result of a negative influence.
Yes, well, you're talking about senses and sensitivities. I mean, in order to get to the senses, you can read to get the information in. You can hear, listen to music to get the information in, and you can see to get the information in. And I do recall back at the Hammer Museum, you had an exhibit where you had written your art. You'd made art that represented the music, which represented some messages as well. Tell us about
But
that.
those was Aquarusmation art scores. Okay, they're actually scores, so they're not paintings. Many of the museums that I've exhibited in consider them to be scores, but they also refer to them just as paintings. They're more powerful than paintings. And what makes them more powerful than paintings is that they those scores carry a message that has to be actualized by living human beings. Okay, and that actualization can only be done appropriately and correctly if the person that's using the score to create music understands the language. Okay, so it's peculiar like all other languages. I don't speak Latin because I don't understand the language. Okay, and one that does not understand the language of Aquarusmation cannot actually play those scores. What they can do, and what is often done with people who try to play them, is that they play to the scores. And that's a different reality than playing the score. Because playing to the score means that they're looking at the score and they're using the energy force of visual elements of which they are using to play to as an inspiration. that's not what the scores are for. The scores are for the language to be understood and then to be played, executed through the actual music or actually creating that score, you see. And every approximation score is the potential for multiple scores. In fact, an unlimited amount of scores. Every single one of them, whether it be 1 pound or 500 pounds, it's exactly the same thing. So that means that the language can be understood by those that really strive and want to understand it. And they have to strive and want to understand it. And the way that they understand it is that they get it from me. Okay.
Yeah.
And if they don't get it from me, there is just a handful of people, not even one handful of people, but a partial handful of people that's on this planet today that can tell you a little bit about those scores. Um, one of the leading components who can talk about those scores and explain them in a way that's credible and most powerfully useful is Ashley Walters, the
Oh,
celloist
Ashley.
that plays with me.
Yeah.
She has the top knowledge next to me as to what these scores have. Okay. And the reason for that is that every single time I've given a talk on these scores, and Ashley is either traveling with us or in town, or I'm in her town, she shows up and she writes incredible notes from every one of them, and she go back and put them into practice.
Oh, man.
Okay. Unlike an ensemble that I led for 20 plus years, where not a single member in that ensemble could speak that language or understood that language. And not a single one of them, listen, not a single one of them ever attended a single presentation that I gave regarding those scores.
That's pretty shocking to me. I would imagine that you
Well, it's shocking to you, and it's shocking to me, and it's shocking to my family, and it's shocking to anybody that know me. But the facts are facts.
Truth.
You see,
Truth.
and so that's the level of awareness that it takes to actually engage oneself with one of those scores and to actually do it properly. They have to have gotten it from me or one of the 3 or 4 other people who have bits and pieces of knowledge of it.
Well, let's talk about, some of this music from back in the day. I mean, if you want to talk about the AACM out of Chicago and all of you beautiful people that got together to put together an organization that represents creative music and forge that forward into the world, whether people understood it or not. There were those who are seekers. There are those who are seekers in our community who want to come out and seek that knowledge. And some people they're just afraid of a note that they don't like. But let's talk about the AACM, how you guys started that with Muhal and Roscoe and all these beautiful people that have been a part of that great organization.
Well, let me sum it up like this. The AACM, from its inception in 1963 or 65, somewhere in that time zone, was an important organization that looked at the possibility of controlling and identifying our music. Okay. It had various levels of success, mostly regarding the fact that it had a few people, maybe let's say a couple handful of people who actually traveled internationally and around the world and brought the AACM spiritual and musical notion into public display.
Right.
Okay. And so that was the most successful part of it. Okay. The second part of it that in its initial stage was the schools that it built for young kids and for middle school kids and for their parents. Uh, that was the second, I say, greatest achievement. And the third one was the beginning to use the idea of a press to codify and document the achievement of the AECM. And that was by creating a journal. And that was only one or two copies of that ever existed. So those were the major achievements. Things like concert series, um, uh, uh, those are not things that are hard. A person that's completely um, anybody can do that. I say it's quite simple. Anybody can put together a concert series or go out and put their own concert on, stuff like that. Things like making recording companies, creating a newspaper or news journal, finding a way to have to achieve wealth, that as you learn how to develop wealth so that you can build institutions, and that those institutions could become self-sufficient by also understanding how to make products and develop wealth so that it can continuously to expand. Those things never occurred, okay? And they never occurred. And so when we look at the AECM 50 and now 55 or so years in existence, you have to look at those early achievements as being the primary high watermarks. And then the rest of them existing with these concert series in New York City and these concert series in Chicago. They are just stuff that happened, and everybody on earth was doing that. From Global Unity in Holland to a bunch of people all around the planet, even George Wein and those guys. It's the same idea. You see, it's just that they came into it with capital,
Right.
therefore they could continue to develop wealth.
Sure.
And so that thing became, that is the Wein organization became this thing that propagated quote that music,
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's one part of the AECM. The other part of the AECM is that the greatest level of influence, I believe, and the most important level of influence, I believe, that occurred in the AECM was from member to member. You see, and from member to member, not just playing in each other's ensemble, but also engaging in a practice of practicing together, rehearsing together, taking long walks together, talking about who we were, and talking about what it is that we want to do or what we are doing.
yeah.
Those are the influences that are powerful. And they are the ones that you cannot extract out and weigh on a scale, because they exist inside of the great reservoir of Anthony Braxton, Henry Threadgill, Roscoe Mitchell, Lester Bowie, Muhal Richard Abrams, and the list goes on. Okay, those are the reservoirs of where the most powerful element of the AECM exists.
Yeah. Well, you talk about community. You're talking about sharing, and I just watched The 13th by Ava DuVernay the other day, and there's always so much to learn and so many perspectives about our people. But one of the things that was mentioned was a table, and that's your dinner table, and that's the place where we all congregate, the place where we all eat and share information and food and love and all those things. And that's kind of what it sounds like happened with those members of the AACM.
Well, yeah, it was a little bit bigger than that. I mean, for example, one of the examples I can give that I was involved in is that Anthony Bryson, Joseph Jarman, and myself had an inner group within the AACM. It wasn't about making music. It was simply that we would gather together on a Sunday morning, and we would look at and talk about music and ideas about music.
Hmm.
And they didn't last long. It wasn't like an all-day session or a 6-hour session, just an hour and a half, and then we'd move on. Okay, and that session lasted amongst us probably 4 times all total, but each one of them were valuable moments. Okay, and another occasion would be is that when I would hang out with Morris Abrams, and we would talk about ideas about music. You say, or when I would hang out or go visit Roscoe Mitchell, we would talk about ideas. So it's these desired small circles within the collective, and then these spontaneous moments that happen within the community that took place by individuals who just happened to get together to practice that day.
Yeah.
And you go to a person's house, you practice all day. You don't just practice for a minute and you all run and do some areas. You practice all day. You stay. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, you talk about the festivals and creative music. You have your own festival that I was honored to host, maybe the second one. The Create Festival is something that you do there where you live, and you also take it to another spot around the world, I think 2 spots a year, correct?
That's correct. The idea for Create was that each year it would give a festival of multiple performances. It started out with 3 days. The second year it went to 2 days. But it started out with the idea that it would be in the home base, which was New Haven, Connecticut, and that it was being showcased at the Firehouse 12, which is here in New Haven. Mm-hmm. And then the other idea is that it should branch out each year to some other part of the country. And the first year it branched out from the 3 days here, it branched out into California to San Francisco, where it was put on for, I believe, 3 days at the lab there in San Francisco.
Right.
Okay. And then the second one took place here in New Haven. It was two days, and that year, the follow through was meant to be done in Philadelphia, mm-hmm. But at the last moment they developed some problems, and it did not happen. And so that year it did. No, that year I changed. I went to Iceland. Okay, that put it on an international level, and I did 2 days in Iceland. Wow. It was done 2 days in New Haven, mm-hmm. And then the 2 days afterwards I went to Iceland, and then my second day there I started again. So within 6 days I had performed the festival in New Haven and Iceland.
Wow.
Okay, with multiple performers and multiple units. Okay, and in the third year, which was last year, which was for 2 days. And the plan was to perform it in London at the Cafe Otto, which a place that I had played and was in residence a couple of times over the years. That plan never quite made it because they were not able to achieve the amount of funds that were necessary to bring it down. Okay, and so so last year became the last year of the festival. Okay, so 3 of them in New Haven and one in California, one in Iceland. That made 5 festivals within 3 years, of which all of the work fell on me.
Yeah, I know.
All of it, from programming to arranging for transportation from across the country, from New York City, from Hartford, from financing it, from paying all the stuff to get publicity and stuff like that out there. All of that fell on me. Okay, and after 5 of them, I decided that the idea had been established, the way in which I envisioned it, and I did it without help from a single grant source or or without a single donation from anybody.
Wow,
Okay,
that's amazing.
and that means a lot. That means that I paid for every flight, I paid for every car service, I paid for every hotel, I paid for every food, I paid for every performance. Okay,
That's huge,
and so
Wadada.
now when I look at it now, all I'm waiting to do, because I have a lot of documents on my desk and tables that I'm working on right now. But the moment I finish them, I'm going to sit back and write the history of the Festival Create. And it's a glorious history. I have every one of them have been audio tape, and most of them, except the last one, videotape. There is some video and filming of the last one, but not from top to bottom. Okay. So that's the Create, and the whole idea of Create is that you offer a diverse program of wadada's music, along with an exhibit of approximation scores, along with a talk. There was always a talk on each and every one of them. What else? There was food catered in for each and every one of them. And it was a grand occasion. And
Definitely
I'm
a grand
very happy
occasion.
to have did it.
Yeah, well, I'm honored to have been a part of it, man. It's a wonder to see, and for you to take care of all of those things. I mean, this is what corporations do, and you did it yourself,
Yes.
man. You're like a mountain. You are the mountain.
Well, I did it because it was my dream. And normally when people start working with you, even though they get paid, they soon get burnt out, and after they get burnt out, they start hiding, and then after they start hiding, they start disappearing, and after they start disappearing, you don't even know they existed anymore, you know, and and it's quite all right, because you see, we do these things in order to learn how to live,
Mm.
and that's my experience from creating the festival, presenting it, making it happen, and then understanding when it had achieved what I wanted it to achieve.
Well, you not only great composer, great artist, and obviously, great producer. I mean, to put these things together. I mean, you're an educator, and I know that um, you offer so much more than just book knowledge to your students. I mean, I remember when you were teaching out at Cal Arts and probably some other places too. I mean, what are some of the inherent things that you like to pass on to these future musicians? I know you see their talent. I know you see what they can go out in the world and do. What philosophy do you give them besides just, the lesson of music?
Well, uh, the logical formula that I tried to introduce during my years of education, which was over 33 years.
Mm,
Okay. I taught at the Creative Music Studio. I taught at Bard College. Creative Music Studio, roughly 5 years. Bard College, 5 years. A few independent schools for a couple of years in between. And then California Institute for the Arts, 22, 23, or 24 years.
mm,
Okay. And uh, uh, I developed a program there that taught the ideas and the culture of music language that I thought was important. I did that I was there for the first 5 years. Then for the next 17 years, I ran that department that I created. Okay.
mm.
Um, but the gist is this, is that creativity is the largest force for creating or bringing into something into the world that's new, unique, and has not ever existed in any other time in the world. That's the most important thing. And to equate that same idea to a musical principle is called a musical moment. That's when an artist, through inspiration, creates something that did not and does not exist in the lexicons of musical ideas
Mm.
anywhere on the planet historically. And there are lots of examples of them. You see, straight across from Scott Joplin straight across, you can find these ideas, these musical moments where they occur. They're very simple. The definition is that musical moment is the smallest moment that occurred that's unique, different, and that come through inspiration or some form of epiphany, meaning a sudden intuitive perception of, or the insight into the reality or the essential meaning of something. That's a definition of epiphany. And, and inspiration is the core and the glue that connects creativity with the object, that is the artist, and the observer, that is those who are engaged into that ritual to understand and be part of, to experience that notion about a sudden impulse of knowledge, equipped with everything, the meaning, its essence, its reality, not needing to be discussed or argued or added to through these forms of engagement.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's the essence of it. The nuts and bolts are a whole nother thing. And the principle of how one teach those and distribute that information is again very simple. Uh, uh, when a student came to me to ask about information, one of the things I tried to let them understand from the very beginning of our interaction is that you don't have to go through every single event in the history of the music or the history of the world in order to have knowledge.
Mm.
Okay. Most schools, most institutions, because they are teaching what's called acquired knowledge, they want you to acquire this legacy of garbage that have trailed the intellectual world from beginning to end before you are able to add a new idea to it. And that's just absolutely wrong. Okay.
Mm.
Because most of the stuff out there that they're teaching is garbage, except the idea that they're teaching everyone who is not wealthy how to serve the wealthy. That's what ultimate education is. It goes back to the German Empire, where they had the Kaisers, not the Kaiser, but whatever they call those guys. It wasn't emperors, but they were Kaisers, I believe they were. Where the principle of education hasn't changed since then. All around the planet, it's the same crap, same garbage. Okay. So what I would tell them is that you don't have to learn everything to start. From step one, to engage with real ideas and begin to build your own pantheon of knowledge. Okay. And the second part of that is that acquired knowledge is not enough to take you home. You have to have the knowledge that's revealed. And the knowledge that's revealed only comes from those who actually engage in spirituality, you see. So the left and the right is balanced, and the up and the down is balanced, and the center is balanced. When you have both forms of knowledge, that is acquired and revealed. You see, acquired, all you got to do is spend the money to start going after it. Okay. But revealed knowledge, you have to spend the time getting to know yourself, reducing your naps or your ego, understanding that the notion of backbiting and all these other trivial kinds of things are not doors into the next door, but they are new locks, other veils that hide the other world. Okay.
Well, let's talk about some of this revealed knowledge with
yes,
with 10 Freedom Summers. I mean, I was able to, for me, I took one journalism class when I was in college. Not that I, was going to be a journalist or anything like that. It's just part of, your curriculum. But I realize that when I'm present and music is being played, all of my thoughts are coming to me so fast, and I'm really formulating all these ideas. And I was able to write a beautiful article in the 3 days that you did 10 Freedom Summers, simply by listening and feeling the vibration of the music that you put forth, talking about, all of our heroes of the past and all of these tragedies that happened to, to Rosa Parks, to Dred Scott, to just throughout that span of time. I think you pretty much talked about a 10-year period, and it's just still prevalent right now in 2020, man. Just want you.
Well, I recall the article that you did on that, and it was really very well constructed, and it had all the relevant images and photographs to go along with it.
Yeah.
No one out there took that kind of care when they wrote about 10 Freedom Summer. Okay. And there were a lot. There are boxes and boxes of articles and reviews and essays regarding that work. Okay. So I can say it this way. Every one of those pieces came through reflection. Okay. I never set out just to write the piece of music. The first piece was written 37 years before the premiere of the work.
Wow.
That first piece was Mega Everest. Okay. And it was written for Leroy Jenkins' new ensemble. Leroy Jenkins is a violinist, composer. Okay.
Yeah.
He was one of my close friends. And uh, on 2 occasions, he asked me for a new composition to use in introducing this new ensemble. Okay. The first one was Mega Evers, and the second one was Manhattan Cycles, which he did with the Revolutionary Ensemble, which was a trio, by the way.
Mm.
This trio that he used for Mega Evers was Andrew Sorrell, Leroy Jenkins, and Anthony Davis.
Mm.
And if you notice, Anthony Davis was the pianist on the premiere of the work.
Yes.
Okay. So that first week happened 37 years ago. And then in the interim period between there and the 2011, I believe it was, the premiere, okay, a couple of pieces were written here and there, one here and there, one over there, because the idea was there, okay, but it has not at that stage formalized as to where these pieces would go or ultimately end up and what kind of form it would ultimately end up in. Okay. What essentially drove the notion inside me to make it a larger work, because before it was a floating work. It was being floated by my inspiration from time to time, add to it, was when I decided that I would add 3 new pieces to it, okay? And I applied for a grant from Chamber of Music America, I believe it's called. And that group of people gave me the first, successful grant to write 3 new pieces. And when I was formulating the grant, at that point now, I'm thinking, well, maybe if I add these 3 new pieces to it, it will be a collection of works, okay? And so I decided I would name it. And I simply just had a reflection or a cosmic reflection of August Wilson's Pittsburgh Cycle, which is a collection of 10 plays, okay, which covers a 100-year period in the African-American experience in the United States of America, 100 years, okay? And I remember reading him saying that those plays was not about history, that he didn't write the plays looking at our experience through a historical scope, but that he used culture as the scope in which to evaluate this experience inside of America, okay? And so I decided that I would take a different route and that I would look at the psychological impact of African Americans being within the society of America. And therefore, it put that work on, I had to fix a time period. The time period was started from 1954, which was Brown versus Board of Education, and that it should end in 1964,
right,
where the Voters' Right Act was signed into a law, okay? And so if you look at that time zone, it gave me 10 summers. And those 10 summers was the most volatile period in the quest for human rights in this country. Nothing has passed it in terms of volatility, of death and confrontation, and spiritual growth. Nothing has happened since then that matches that. Hopefully, through the will of the Almighty, what's happening now in this country and around the world will gain the status to eclipse that 10 Freedom Summer period. See, if it does, it will make great achievement.
Yeah.
You see, so my 10 Freedom Summer is centered around the summer as being the feel and the moment of engagement, confrontation, realization, and then force through the demonstration of the morality of a society, forcing the nation to come to grips and pass laws that should affect some change, even though they don't. But nevertheless, they are part of the beginning steps towards change.
Mm.
Okay. So 10
Change,
Freedom
man.
Summer is about that. But the point that I was trying to make earlier is that in every instance, there's a spiritual, psychic flash of information that's needed to go inside of the pieces. And every piece has what I call its own signature of what that work is all about. Okay. Mega Evers, which was the first piece, occurs in a 3 to 4 to 5 second spans. It occurs when he pulls into his driveway and he opens the door and he steps out. When he steps out, that's when the seconds start. And when he got his briefcase and turned and he was shot, and then he falls to the ground, his son and his wife is in the doorway that's in the garage looking out and observes that. All that happened within 5 seconds. That's what that piece is about. Okay, it's 16 minutes long. You see?
Yeah.
JFK is not about his assassination. I have other pieces that deal with that. JFK is about the new frontier. Okay. But the image that triggered the psychic response to him was during his motorcade to Allerton. A few of those frames during that motorcade when his body was being taken to Allerton Cemetery to be laid to rest. That's what that is about, because it sees something that happened. And then when they light the torch, which is to set up the memory of JFK as a living memorial to him, okay? We also see that at that same moment, the new frontier goes up in the smoke. Because Johnson sugarcoated it into his great society. They both have the same genesis. At least the great society has its genesis in the new frontier. Okay, but they're very different documents, and their meaning is for different reasons.
Yeah.
You see. And then with JFK, with him signing of the Civil Rights Document in 1964, which is the only positive legacy that he has as a president. Okay, he signed that bill because he had nothing else to show other than political and military involvement in other governments and stuff like that. He had nothing to show for what he had done.
Mm.
Okay, and but he signed the document, so I used that. His signature in that document has to do with a horizontal verification of 64, and at the very end of the 64, a vertical implication of the 64. And that happened just at the point where the piece is about to end, but it happened with the violin and the piano because they could articulate without difficulty an interval of a 64th from the lowest note to the highest note.
Yeah.
Okay. And what that says is that horizontally, the count started from 1 up to 63, and then at the 64, it dropped to the vertical implication of that same idea. Okay. And so every single piece has a signature in it. That's the Timothy ensemble pieces, and every single piece have moments of psychic connection. Everyone.
Man, there's just a wealth of knowledge. I mean, you spent your time in your lifetime paying attention to your surroundings and not just paying attention, but diving in deep and getting the facts and the truth, as you say, and you give that back to us through, your teachings, your music, your compositions, your camaraderie. And I just, all honor and blessings to you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us, man. And there's so much more, obviously, we can talk about. I mean, we wanted to have you out at Just Jazz and all of these crazy COVID things, which happened to us, stopped us.
Yeah, well, it impacted the world. And even though it has tragically exposed a lot about the American systems, I'm talking about North, Central, and South, by having these right-wing governments and dictators in power, it exposed that our judgment have consequences, and that those consequences will play out because we chose to go down those roads.
Yes.
The COVID, the virus is with us. It will be always with us. And there are multiple other ones coming. And I don't say that. I say it from what my research has shown me and what I've read from other people who have knowledge of this stuff, that this is just the tip of the iceberg. And that we have to learn that our world is never going back to what it was, and that we have to learn how to live in an environment where viruses are part of our encounters.
It's a new world order that I don't know if many people are ready to stand up to and face. We've been locked up. We're so anxious to get back out and to be around people and around music and around love and those things. And I know it's going to be different.
Now, it's already different. What has been changed, And being tired of understanding yourself is a sick idea, you see, because that's what isolation has given all of us an opportunity to do, is to learn something about ourselves and to learn how to live in the context of knowing that you have to understand that when the waters change, either high or low, to get across the river or the lake, you have to take note.
Yeah, you got to change your perspective. I mean, what you thought before, you got to switch it up. I can't go across this road anymore. Let's go up here,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's a beautiful thing.
yeah, man.
With all its tragic, it's a beautiful thing. And I can tell you the most beautiful thing about it is that a majority of the low populated species and hidden species and all these things have revitalized with human beings being in house for just 2 single months. For just 2 single months, these things have come back. Frogs and species and insects that we've never seen have come back.
They're like, hey guys, come out.
It has happened within 2 months of being locked up. And what does that tell us?
That tells
It
us a
doesn't tell
lot.
us that, oh my God, I'm tired of being in the house. We got to get out there now and go to work. No, it tells us that the whole world needs to be in forced lockdown at least twice a year for either 2 weeks or a month at a time. The whole world. Because if we did that, our lives would continue to change and grow in the most positive way. And the planet would begin to recover in the most positive way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey man, it is a new world, and I'm glad that, you know, species are coming back and things are changing. You always have a great positive way of looking at these things, and this is what you express through your music, through your teachings, and man, it's just a blessing, brother, to know you, and thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Leroy. It's been a
Absolutely.
pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Always is. You've just seen another version of the Just Jazz Cafe with the wonderful, beautiful, historic, and just super wisdom cat, my man and yours, Mr. Wadada Leo Smith. Wadada, man, we look forward to seeing you soon, man, when we are able to get back together. And just thank you, brother, and I appreciate you.
Yes, inshallah.
Inshallah. All right, there it is, man. We did it.
Yes.
We
Thank
did
you and peace, man.
Man, peace to you, my friend. Always love.
Always love.